What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno. And we're returning for an all-time classic. This is from 1995, 30 years ago. And it's a tune called Go Ahead London, though it is by a German duo on a German label. So I'd never really known the story behind this one. It was a track I heard very early on. It was on either the first or the second compilation, Sound of Acid Core, which was from the, what was it, Techno Importe, I think was the label. I think it was like part of the Hypnotic umbrella. Nevertheless, it was a series of double CD releases where I had the first 3 in the series, I think even the first 4, but though by the time the 4th one came out, I was already buying records and I was sort of, finding tracks on my own, whereas in the very earliest days of going to rave parties, it was a few mixtapes I had and some CDs that set me on the path and got me to start looking for certain artists and labels to begin with. But yes, this track, Go Ahead London, I think it was on the second one. I think it was Sound of Acid Core Volume 2. Nevertheless, Tesox, they're a German duo. I think one guy's name is Andreas. I'm trying to remember the other guy's name. It might be like Tillman or something like that. But yes, Plastic City, it's a German label. Again, this is 95, so acid-techno, it's been around for a few years at this point, and there are some different sub-styles and different regional hubs of it, including London as well as Germany. But it's still in the relatively early days, compared to the proliferation of acid-techno, certainly over the course of the rest of the 90s and then on into the 2000s. But yes, it's a staple tune. I think there's a lot of folks from the UK London scene, or the UK acid scene, pardon me, who were very fond of this one back in the day. I think it has sort of a legendary reputation. It's not one that I got very early on in my collection. I think I did get it through Discogs, so we're talking about at least 2004, 2005, 2006. I think by that time I did have it, so it was probably one that I just always wanted to find, never found it in a record shop, and by the time I began using Discogs online, it was one that I sought out, which is helpful because it has a very clear sample, Go Ahead London, which is actually the name of the track. I've talked about it before. Sometimes there's a track that has a sample that is not the name of the tune, so you search for that phrase and you're not finding what you're looking for. And in other cases, it's a great tune, but there's no sample, so you don't really have anything to work with if it's on a mixtape and there's no track list on the mixtape. So, which is, of course, why I enjoyed CDs back in the day, because there was a clear track list on the back of the CD. In any case, this is an all-time classic. Some people I've seen categorize this as acid trance. To me, it's more acid techno, but I fully agree that, like a lot of tunes in the mid-90s, even the second half of the 90s, it's somewhere on the acid techno, acid trance spectrum. Again, to me, it's more down the acid techno part of the spectrum, but I do understand people who would see this as sort of a hybrid tune. But yes, it has a slightly subterranean sound, especially, there's like 2 kind of parts to it. There's a brighter part, and then it goes into essentially like a breakdown. You get the sample, and then it goes into a darker part, and then it goes back and forth, I think, once or twice between the 2 sides of the track after that. But yeah, the sample's just classic, and I think there's, again, a lot of folks, no matter where they come from, who see this as reflective or as a tip of the cap to the burgeoning by then London acid techno scene. So here we go. This is Tesox and their track Go Ahead London from Plastic City Records, 1995. Swirling itself, but it's also going up and down this like resonance ladder, like falling into a well and coming back out. Wait for the sample. Yeah, first the house. And then it goes underground.
Go ahead, London.
Acid top to bottom, real like transformer acid down below, like starfall acid up above.
Go ahead, London. Go ahead, London.
Such a variety of acid work. I remembered it stopped like that. It feels like shorter than my nostalgic memory of it. I felt like there was another section before it did that. But yes, it does a whole lot in the, 5.5 or so minutes that it is playing. And as I said, I love the variety of acid work. There's that deep, heavy acid work down below, that like acid bass just giving you the foundation. There's those like laser style acid bubbles. There's the more electric style acid, especially up top where it sounds again like a shooting star kind of acid. There's that like snarling acid that really gets going, and there's a few points along the way where there's different layers of the acid all operating independently but giving you this large, lush acid composite, this amalgamation of different acid lines, which just really has this resonant and deep sound to it, again like vertical acid. So yeah, it's an all-time classic, and I think for good reason. It just really is about the acid work, which is to say, sometimes acid trance certainly acid trance, but sometimes even acid techno, there'll be some melody or some like vocal refrain that essentially like draws your attention, maybe not away from the acid, but makes you focus on it. Whereas this, it's just all about the acid. Even when you get the sample, it's just a prelude to dropping in more acid. I really do think my favorite part is right after the first breakdown, when we get that, again, the hats come in for a second, there's a bit of suspense and drama, we get the first articulation of the sample, which I'm imagining comes from some like, some movie where there's like like a control tower, go ahead London, or something. Like, it feels like it must be from a sci-fi movie or something like that. But yeah, we get the first articulation of the sample, and then it comes in with this rolling, like rumbling acid line deeper than anything that we've heard before. So it just makes me think of being on like the London Underground, but hanging on and listen to acid techno as you charge along. So I do think that's my favorite moment of the tune, but again, it's an all-time classic. I heard it way back in the day, probably early 97 at the latest, because I remember getting both Sound of Acid Core 1, which was 96, and Sound of Acid Core Volume 2, which was like early 97, around the same time, so I'm going to guess like spring of 97, so not quite 30 years that I've heard this, but close to it, and it is, as I said, a 95 record, so it's been around a long time. I believe the release is called The Hand of God, which is one of the tunes on here, but I think for most people it's all about the B1 tune, which is London, or rather Go Ahead London. I was going to say London Acid City, which is another seminal tune by Loki, Chris Liberator, and Laurie Immersion. And if I haven't reacted, I'm sure I've reacted to that. I probably reacted to like 4 or 5 different versions of that, because there's a number both back in the day and more recently. But the point is, this is a similar type of track. It's a seminal tune. People who know acid from the 90s will be familiar with this one, and I think it still stands up today. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.